Good evening, everyone. Time for episode 23 of The Drums of Doom, part 2 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga, by me. Starting on page 281, the chapter entitled Walking in Shadows. Alright. Efmiel, Vlad said, "Bring me my armor." "Yes, master." Piece by piece she brought it, as she had done for him at least 100 times. Removing it from the weapons rack, she was proud of the job that she had done. It was clean and free of the dog's filth. The blacksmith had repaired it well, even improving it in places. Vlad was quite capable of dressing himself, but he preferred it this way. Perhaps some small piece of his humanity remained. She served him without complaint, and he was soon prepared for battle. "I am starting to remember." "Remember what, master?" "Our life before." "Oh." "In the times to come, the love that we shared will be impossible." "Yes, master. As long as I live, I will try to keep you safe." "I shall never be safe here. Your enemies will soon create an accident to be rid of me." "The time of your escape is coming, Efmiel. In 2 weeks' time, I shall call for the next gladiatorial event in the arena. It will unify the clans. When the day comes, be ready. You will only get one chance." "How will I know that it's time?" "Oh, you will know." Bending forward, he kissed her warmly, and she received it thus. Now bring me my sword, slave." "Yes, master." She handed him his weapons belt, and he donned it. "You will serve Dolin Varul in my absence. He will be training the new Marines. Treat any wounds that they incur during practice, and follow his commands." "Yes, master." "Don't worry, Efmiel. Dolin will not betray me. You will be safe with him." He left her then. Stepping into a shadowy corner, he smiled, and then he was gone. She spent a long time contemplating his words. When the time came, she would be ready. Flying through the ethers of shadow, he spread his demonic wings wide for the sheer joy of it. His minions would come to him at times, whispering new happenings to him. Inumbro, queen of the Umbra Draco, the eldest female dragon in Shadowland, had just laid a new clutch of eggs. When his mission was complete, he would have to stop by and visit her. The Umbra Draco were the oldest inhabitants of the plain, dragons of might and shadow. Their scales were as black as night, their talons razor-edged swords, and their teeth even, curved and wicked. The weaving of shadows was their magic, their life's blood the animating force. Indeed, they were certainly the most powerful beings who dwelled here, and they would bow to no power save his. His rule over them was tenuous, however, for they were a living power as old as demonkind. Nevertheless, they were an honorable race, and respect and wisdom could quiet them and tame the beast. There was no time now to pay Inumbro a visit. Carmen's rangers were approaching a danger beyond their most terrifying nightmares. It was up to him to lead them safely beyond it. Preparing Derek's potion, he drank it. When he stepped forth into the southernmost passage of the oldest crypt on Tempest, even he knew fear. He was no longer in his realm. He was in the land of Andomar Tabarun, the Lych King. Lich. The Lich, or Lich, is a name derived from the term Lich Gate, which describes the roofed gate often placed over a coffin or crypt in ancient times to shelter the dead. Frequently, flowering vines would be urged to grow upon it, thus lending a peaceful yet morbid beauty to the sight. However, as time passes, so too does the meaning of words, and in this case, Lich Gate was borrowed and adapted over time to describe the dead's resting place, and eventually to describe the dead themselves. In a similar fashion, the final metamorphosis of the term came to describe a certain kind of evil spirit, not wraiths or shadows of the formerly living, nay, but spirits so despicably evil that their souls refuse to leave their corpses. They are not to be confused with mere zombies granted unlife through magic, but rather beings finding undeath of their own free will. Driven and motivated by their own hatred of the living, they lament and despise the reviled life now lost. It is anger so ill as to drive them on a quest for immortality, using fell magic, secret chemicals, ritual sacrifice, and acts so grave that they are unmentionable. Over time, their infinite hate consumes what is left of their living bodies until naught remains but a frightful husk, a shell of once life. The mind of the creature, if such a term applies, remains locked in the remaining body undying. The evil spirit then hides its disembodied soul in a secret vessel, sealing it with magic so grim that legend requires that even the gods refuse to unlock them. The bodies of these cursed spirits exist partially in the plane of their former existence and partly in the land of the dead. Some might call the realm a place of evil, but it is in fact neither good nor ill. In essence, it is the most terrifying neutrality of death, indiscriminate and irresistible. That's a photo of the Lych King created by my friend Tommy Magazu. Quite a piece of work. Okay. Nevertheless, it is a place where agents of evil are granted free rein to orchestrate their foul plots. Among these are included all the ranks of the undead, which some call the Nosferatu, vampires, ghouls, werewolves, ghosts, and all the conjured ranks of the undead are among them, but none are more powerful than the Lich. Usually, their insane motivations seek resolution to some grave injustice, wrongs that may have occurred countless centuries in the past. The transformation from life to unlife has been undertaken with success only a handful of times throughout the ages. Most who attempt it fail to apply some minor detail or meet death too soon, but some have followed in the steps of the first, pursuing a path so dark and twisted that no goodly beings would dare imagine it. Nevertheless, history chronicles the rise and reign of the first, and among Lich kind, he rules supreme. In life, his name was Andomar Tabarun. In undeath, he is known only by one title, the Lych King. It is ironic that in life he was once Lyle Selfar, but the tragic loss of his life mate turned his heart to grief. It drove him to seek vengeance upon the ones that stole her from him. His hatred was so complete that he invented the foul process required to extend his life, even beyond the near immortality of the elves. One evil spell after another, chemicals and sacrificial blood, slowly consumed his dying body until he had cheated death itself through undeath. His madness was so complete that he took all his loyal followers with him, and of them there were many. Antinius Molinar, chronicler of history. Andomar Tabarun, the Lych King. Even the master of plans within plans knows fear. He had entered the crypt of his own free will, only now he wished that he had not. Through sorcery, he was invisible to the eyes of the dead, but that gave him little comfort. He would have to remain here, in the lower halls of the Lych King's lair, until he successfully led Carmen's rangers safely beyond it. If the Lich discovered them too soon, he would be powerless to save them. His ability to travel through shadow would fail near the center of Tabarun's domain, for there the darkness and the power of evil were absolute. 4 miles below the surface, the crypt was once the lower halls of a glorious citadel. That castle was the center of a once great city in the heart of Lyle Selfar rule, flourishing for thousands of years. A vast labyrinth of tunnels ran beneath it, both to extend the fortress and in search of precious metals and gems. They transformed the lowest of those passageways into vast catacombs, where the dead were laid to rest. It was perhaps the most glorious city that had ever existed on Tempest, but time erodes even the most powerful empires. Slowly, ages passed, and war, disease, and unrest toppled its towers. Andomar Tabarun was its final king, and when his heart turned black, all that was good in the city fled, and what remained was naught but death. Many thousands of years later, the city above had vanished back into the earth, and most of its many tunnels had collapsed or filled with water. All that remained now were the lowest halls, maintained for all time by the magical might of their king and defended by his minions of death. It was into these catacomb halls that he had willingly come. Was he completely mad? Probably. In his right hand he grasped Sharakul Loth. In his left hand rested upon the hilt of Decapitator, the sword of his father. The Duaredheim's rod rested beneath his breastplate, carefully protected near his solar plexus. It was uncomfortable, but he had no intention of misplacing it either. The device would act like a siren's call, luring his quarry toward him and hopefully away from the Lych King. Always a curious soul, it was likely his greatest weakness, because he was not content to remain in those lower passages unknowing. Step by step, he began exploring. He would peer into every unlocked doorway and look within every lonely room. The crypt itself was a maze of twisting catacombs, worship halls, and burial chambers. He examined the contents of each dusty room and every coffin and cairn. He even journeyed into the many rooms that adjoined those halls, and there he saw treasures beyond imagining, hoarded eons before in honor of the dead. Powerful guardians had been left to protect those ancient dead and their riches, guardians waiting for some hapless intruder to wake them. All the deathly horrors were there, evil wrapped in ragged rags, the mummy, the barrow-wight, wraiths and apparitions, terrors so powerful that he trembled. Once a hulking form approached him, a mummy king with rotten orbs and tiny burning points of light for eyes. Shambling toward him, its arms rose, and a moaning wail escaped from its desiccated throat. Terrified, he stepped back and leveled his wand at the moldering corpse, his fingers nearly unleashing its magical flame. But suddenly the mummy grew appeased, as if Vlad had seemed to him merely a phantom memory of its life long past, a window into another time, or perhaps a dream lingering only to torture its forgotten soul. When the creature returned to its resting place, he quietly departed. His searching, although a terrible risk, was not without purpose, for the Furman would soon reach the catacombs, and he intended to do all that he could to lead them safely past Andomar's realm. He didn't simply need that which they carried, he needed them alive. It was for this reason that he sought the chambers of the Lych King himself, and much to his horror, he found it. The crypt had in levels 3, its tunnels branching from an immense central chamber like veins from a heart. In Vlad's wanderings, he discovered that except for a few passages, all the roads of the catacombs led there. Silently he approached, for he could feel the presence of evil thicken, as if he was walking up the face of a sand dune. Each step became a struggle between his will and his subconscious drive for self-preservation. But he possessed a courageous spirit, driving him forward against everything that was natural. What he then came to see was both glorious and sorrowful. The chamber was ensorcelled by a great glamour. It created an everlasting illusion of what those halls had looked like at the height of their glory. The walls were draped in the most ornate tapestries, The floor and ceiling were a mosaic masterpiece depicting gods, mystical creatures, and ancient heroes. The east end of the chamber bore the king's ornate throne, behind which was a curtain of eternal flame, burning from floor to ceiling without smoke. Facing the king were his 4 field commanders, fully armored, and behind them were 4 ranks of once elfin soldiers, with golden mail and grim countenance. A casual observer would perceive these illusions of life as real, but to eyes that saw truly, the genuine horrors would be revealed, for here were ranks upon ranks of the undead, cursed souls who had followed their king on his journey into oblivion. They were lost souls, spirits forever filled with the longing of life's distant memories, eternally cursed to stand in undeath, lingering forever in a skeletal mockery of life. Standing in the doorway of that great chamber, he saw their true essence. To the skeletal warriors that guarded their king, he seemed to be no more than a passing breeze, and their lifeless stares traveled through him unknowing. Their sinister gaze chilled him to the bone. His skin crawled with the creeping touch of their presence. His concentration never faltered, although he prayed that his invisibility was complete. He knew that if he had to face the Lych King and his minions alone, he would likely not survive. Andomar sat upon his throne, but he was not inanimate, as were his soldiers. In life he was a great leader, wealthy and powerful. In undeath he was a lifeless husk. His bones and what was left of his flesh had been made nearly indestructible through the processes that had transformed him. His hair was sparse and thin, his face a gruesome mask of mummified flesh and bone. Perhaps the most frightening thing of all were his eyes that still looked as bright and vibrant as they had in life. His robes, once rich and trimmed in gold, were now rotting and ruined, a mere mockery of what they had once been. Andomar's gaze was fixed upon that which he held in his right skeletal hand, a crystal globe in which several tiny figures danced. "Come to me, my children," he said, "and you shall join my ranks forever." He laughed then, a terrible hissing laugh filled with all the glee that a child might feel when they learn a new secret. So he knows that they have come, Vlad thought. He stood there for some time, listening and studying his new opponent. How then would he lead his pawns past the king of the dead? Perhaps he would have to leave these halls and intervene before they arrived here, or perhaps he would have to challenge the Lych King at the center of his power. If he chose to act, then there was a danger that such extreme measures might alter the prophecy and change his destiny. Was he underestimating the abilities of Carmen and her rangers, or was he second-guessing himself? He still had time to search these halls. He still had time to contemplate. In the end, the fates would decide. But there was one thing that could ensure all of their survival, if only he could find it in time. Stairs and rooms and things. The cathedral had but 2 exits, the great archway that led back the way that they had come, and a smaller, man-sized doorway that opened into a guardroom and then to a set of wide spiral stairs leading down. Down and down they climbed, perhaps for 50 feet or more, until the stairs ended in yet another room some 70 feet in width, 50 feet across, with a high ceiling of about 30 feet. It was cold, damp, and barren, completely devoid of anything save a fine coating of dust. Strangely, there was no apparent exit. Perhaps this was once their arms room, Kalos said, or even a treasure room. "Try the gem," Carmen said. "This place worries me." With the words, its light burst forth, pulling Kalos' hand in the direction of the far wall. "There must be a secret door," Kalos said. "All right, everyone, spread out and search." Fanning out, the floor was of well-polished stone and the walls of similar finish. Tarek, walking across the floor, felt a stone suddenly shift and sink beneath his feet. Soon there erupted a terrible screeching sound, like a rusted mechanism coming suddenly and painfully to life. "Everyone out," Tarek said. "It's a trap." Running for the stairs proved futile, as a thick stone door fell out of the ceiling and blocked their escape. Noxious gas poured out of holes in the walls. It was then that the ceiling began to descend. There was no way out. They would all be crushed. "There is no door," Karina screamed. "The gem led us here," Kalo said. "There must be a way out. Search the walls for hidden levers or any seams in the stone." The gas was increasing. Soon they would all suffocate. "There," Carmen said, pointing toward the far wall. "I see the outline of something." Kalor soon pulled out a hidden lever and depressed it. A small door suddenly slid open before them, revealing a narrow tunnel beyond it. "Quickly," she ordered. "Everyone out." Choking, coughing, and feeling wretched, they exited the room mere seconds before the ceiling struck the floor. Gas continued to spill out into the tunnel. "Run!" "That was too close," Tarek said as they wound their way along the passage. 30 paces more, and it abruptly ended. "Where do we go from here?" "There is no exit." "There must be another concealed door," Kalo said. "Why else would anyone dig this tunnel?" "Maybe it was never finished," Dow said. But Kerr soon found a trapdoor, beneath years of dust beneath their feet. "Careful," Kerr said. "It could be trapped as well." "I'll search it," Kalo said. "Everyone stand back." Brushing the dust aside, he lightly traced the outline of the door, its frame and hinges. In no time, he found the latch. The door was keyless, simply designed to lift open or push up from below. If there is a trap, it's rigged on the far side. Here goes. Pulling slowly, he lifted the door as gently as he could until the lip just passed the frame. With his off hand, he drew his dagger and propped the door open with it. Crouching down, he peered around the edges of the door, looking for tripwires or other signs of tampering, but he found nothing. Ever so quietly, he eased it open, ready to slam it shut again and leap away. But beneath the trap door was just another tunnel, lonely and dark. "Another passage," he whispered, "running opposite and under this one." "Everyone down," Carmen said. "Tarek, take the lead." Grabbing the frame of the door, he first lowered his feet through the opening, and then his body, until he hung suspended from the ceiling. Looking and listening to his utmost, he dropped the remaining 5 feet to the floor below. Landing well, he flexed his knees and took the rest of the shock with his hands. Pausing, he listened for signs of alerted enemies. An iron-bound door barred the tunnel some 30 feet ahead, while behind him the passage seemed to be widening. Nothing stirred. Waving them down, they worked together to make the fall as safe as possible. Searching the passage, Tarek found signs of recent use. "Goblins," he said. "I'd recognize their spoor anywhere." "How many?" "At least a dozen. They came into the area, milled about by the door, and then traveled back the way they came." "Kalor," Carmen said. "Check the door. Maybe it's locked." "Not locked," Kalor said. "Frozen. No one has opened this door for 100 years at least." "Can you open it?" "Not without a battering ram." Kerr readied his axe, but Dartin beat him to it. With a mighty kick, he shattered what was left of the wood around the doorknob and keyhole, fracturing the hinges simultaneously. A slight push was all that it took to collapse the door inward. "The wood must have been rotten," Kalor said. "Yeah, rotten," Tarek said, examining the door. "But the fibers were as hard as the day the portal was built. It would have taken a woodsman half an hour to cut through it, or a giant. No elf or man could have just kicked it in the way he did. We should keep moving. That noise traveled a long way." Kalor called upon the diamond's magic once more. It pulled him urgently west through the broken doorway. Beyond the doorway was a wide intersection between their tunnel, which continued west, and 2 additional passageways, one bending to the right and northwest, the other left and southwest. A faint cool breeze blew in from the northwest. The west passage reeked of rot and decay. And the southwest passage waited in silence. For the first time, the diamond was indecisive. Both west and southwest seemed positive. Try southwest first, Carmen said. We can always backtrack. The tunnel continued that way for some 80 feet. Its walls were covered with mosaics of once great beauty. Most depicted dragons struggling against humanoid creatures of alien appearance, wielding a strange device that seemed to drag lightning from out of the heavens unto itself, and then unleash it wherever the aliens willed it. The aliens, although great in stature, were slight of build, with bulbous eyes and the color of starlight, green skin, and slender, long-fingered hands. They stood about in a circle of many, facing inward, with their hands interlocked with one another. Few other details could be seen, for time had erased much of the artist's original rendering. An open arched doorway, 10 feet high and 6 feet wide, ended the passage. Beyond it was a large room, at least 50 feet wide and over 100 feet long. Dao, Carmen whispered, I think that now would be a good time for a little more light. Of course, my lady, he said with a bow and a flourish. Turning about to face them all, he brought his hand up as if to shield his eyes. Receiving his message, they prepared themselves for the blinding light to come. Moving to the front, he stood beneath the archway facing inward. Searching his memory, he soon recalled the words, summoned his inner power and spoke, Permitto ibi existo lumen. Pointing toward the ceiling, he snapped his fingers. A brilliant glow bathed the room in light, casting eerie shadows in every direction. When their eyes adjusted, the great room was revealed. Tall pillars of stone that were evenly spaced 4 to a side flanked the long walls. Stone gargoyles sat atop of each one. There was a square opening in the ceiling. It may have once served as a chimney, like those used in the exotic Shamroon far to the east. An iron-bound door, like the previous one, stood centered on the distant wall. 2 large wooden chests rested on either side of it. The floor was of well-polished stone. The air was dry, still, and forgotten. Kalor, Carmen said, take a look around. There may be more traps. Cautiously, he stepped into the room, slipping along the right-hand wall. He paused for a moment to peer through his reading crystal. Perhaps his most prized wizardly possession, it allowed him to read magical inscriptions, and in some cases, see telltale signs of the presence of enchanted items or dangerous protective wards. The 2 chests by the far wall contained some magic, and the far door is magically sealed. I see no protective wards in the room. If there is a trap, it must be mechanical. Keep looking, Carmen urged. Let's not take any chances. Everything seems natural, but there is something strange about the gargoyles. They just look like simple statues, Tarek observed. There is some magic in them, Kalor said. It could be another trap. Let's try to get through this one, Carmen said. Leave the chests alone. Tarek, you take the left wall and Kalor the right. Everyone else, follow me. Moving cautiously, they entered the room, the stone-dead eyes of 8 gargoyles staring down at them from above. Kalor had already reached the far doorway. Kneeling down, he rummaged through his backpack for something. What none of them could have known was the presence of a pressure plate-activated trap at the center of the room. When Carmen stepped on it, the floor panel beneath her suddenly sank. The eyes of the gargoyles burst with life, and what once was granite became flesh. A titanic thoom echoed from behind them as a tremendous stone door fell through the entrance archway, sealing them inside. Shaking off the stiffness of stone, the monsters stretched their bony wings and then swooped down upon them. To arms! Tarek shouted. The gargoyles have taken wing. In a flash, the already tense adventurers readied their shields and drew their swords. Too slow, perhaps, for creatures magically created to guard and to kill. Attacking from behind, they struck Karina hard and hoisted her aloft, knocking her sword out of her grasp. It fell clattering to the floor. 2 gargoyles carried her, and 2 more grappled with Leander nearby. their wings beating hard for the opening in the ceiling. Struggling hard to escape, she twisted and kicked, but could not break free, because their grip was as strong as iron. Leander slashed viciously at his rightmost attacker, but the cunning beast caught his sword arm at the wrist with its prehensile feet, and their ascent continued. Alright, we got 30 minutes in. We'll end the episode here at the top of page 294, where we'll begin again next time, and we'll see how Carmen and her rangers fear against the gargoyle trap. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great night. And as always, read The Drums of Doom, Part 2 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga, and all the following novels by me. Thank you and have a great night.